Running Sentences presents A Judge, a Jury, and a Sheriff. Part 4. The Waitress. The waitress for the local diner, Sammy, goes on a bit of an adventure in discovering things. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and incidences within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situations, and/or events, and/or characters, and/or anything really, is purely coincidental. This story is meant to be entirely dark, black satire. It is not meant to be taken seriously. Story written and narrated by Michael Henry. Copyright 2023, Michael Henry. All rights reserved. Sammy, having finished her shift at the diner, a long drawn-out one, had stifled a yawn. Her foot was tapping against the pavement as she stood around the back of this diner. Her ride was late, and she was busy trying to get her cigarette lit, but the mugginess out here made it icky to have any heat around, and so she wasn't really feeling like it, but she really did need a cigarette. She'd nearly given up on the whole affair and started walking, when a red classic car that needed tons of space to get anywhere pulled up with a honk of its horn. She rolled her eyes as the window rolled down. "What took you so long?" "Do you know how long it takes to get anywhere around here without having to stop for gas in this thing?" "I've heard you complain enough about it, yet you still drive it everywhere you go." "I can't get rid of it, and it's the only car I got." "Hey, it's your only car, I know. Can we go home already?" "First, baby, you gotta tell me about your day." She rolled her eyes as she made her way around to get into the passenger side of the car. Her hand found the handle and pulled on it, only for it to not open, which meant either it hadn't been unlocked, or it was another broken item on this vehicle in a long list of such items. "Charles, I will tell you if you let me in." "Right, I forgot to mention that the door broke. Your only way in is through the window, or you can crawl over this way and over me. I'm too big to go through that window, and you already know that." She could feel his seedy grin without having to look through the passenger window, and it didn't take much effort to see if the door would open without some finessing. She bumped her hip against the door a few times and tried the handle again, pulling on it, and then found a satisfying click when it announced that the door would open. She pulled it with a relieved sigh leaving her. "Now, if only you could fix this car." "I'm working on it. My last trip to the hospital took away most of my savings. I can't pay for this thing if I got to pay my debt." "We all have our debts to pay to that company and that hospital. You don't hear the rest of the time complaining about it, do you?" He nodded yes, in fact. She shook her head as well. She realized that, yeah, most people in the town complained, but He jerked the car gear column into action and put his foot heavily down on the gas. The car would rumble its way, not too quickly, to a nearby mobile home park where many houses were spread out as far as one could see. Charles would putter up and down a few of these rows of roads that led to houses before pulling to a stop in front of one mobile home. Sammy wasted no time in getting out of the vehicle. "You need company today?" "You're my stepbrother." "No, I do not need company. Why would you ask me that?" "Stepbrother through like 4 different sets of parents that have adopted you. We're not related, but I guess we could say we're related, but you always need company. You're always looking for company." "No, I do not need company." "Fine, see if I pick you up any time soon." He rattled off down the row of houses a little ways before pulling into his own mobile home. It was a haphazard parking job across what little lawn he had. She eyed him warily as he got out of his car and went into his home and was soon gone. Once she was entirely sure he wasn't going to come back out, she went into her own. Her home was pretty much a one-room space, though there was a small space for a closet and another for a bathroom with the little blinds to help divide spaces. All of the rest of it, though, was piled into one room, from the kitchen to the bedroom. She looked for signs of her boyfriend, Kurt, but there weren't any signs that he'd returned from the oil fields yet. 3 months out there and nary a letter or a call. With a sigh, she tossed her purse onto a nearby couch and plodded towards the bed. Usually she got food at the diner before the end of her shift, so she rarely needed to eat here, which was a good thing, since mice and the odd cockroach were climbing home to most of her cabinets. Her movement across the floor made the doors to the cabinets open and showed a rather brazen-looking mouse standing out there, openly staring out. "Hello, Mousie. What have you been up to lately? Or getting up to something lately? Probably have. They say it only takes mice 90 days to have kids. Maybe it was shorter. Can't remember." The mouse was gone from view before she got another step further. It didn't matter, as her attention went to the dining room table near her bed. Plenty of red and yellow letters warning of money owed sat there. She picked up one that had been sent yesterday, if she remembered correctly. She got the envelope open to see what this one had wanted. "From the debt agency, who wanted a grand total of $7,000 for wasting their time, since I failed to repay the amount owed by a certain date. I swear the judge said an amount I would pay, and that would be fine as long as I made those payments." Her grumble didn't get loud, but she let it out to relieve some stress at this annoyance she got building up between her shoulders. She dropped the letter back onto the table and moved a few feet to her bed before going face first into it. "Why me? Pay what I can, and still they come and get me. Still they want all that I got, and I don't have that much." She quickly went to sleep. By the next afternoon, Sammy had walked the 5 miles to the local strip mall, debt letters in hand, headed for the local lawyer's office. The parking lot to this place had more potholes than parking spaces, since most places here had closed, but the single-room lawyer's office still operated, mostly thanks to the debt operation agency that had taken up much of the town. There was even a line to get in, though she thanked her luck and Jesus that it was only 3 people waiting outside the door today. She hurried across the parking lot, avoiding those potholes and getting in line just in time to see her old friend Caroline was already there as the third one waiting. "Sammy!" "Oh, Carol, how you doing?" The two did a quick hug and separated with smiles. Don't tell me." Sammy held up the letters to show their colorfulness. "I've even been keeping up with my payments, but they ain't happy. The only good thing now is without the judge, these little things probably won't be heard for a little while, will they?" "I don't think I'm that lucky, darling. The agency is going to grab things because the court already ruled that they could, and they're going after all of my money." "Oh no, what you gonna do?" "I gotta talk to the lawyer and see if I can salvage my way out of this. Out of all of this, really." Her friend Caroline could only offer a sympathetic head shake of, "Oh no," to which Sammy returned with a shrug, as she shook the letters in her hand to take out some frustration on them instead of who she was about to deal with and who she would have to deal with down the road. "I almost wish the judge had gone sooner. So much trouble ever since that debt company came to town and that judge started talking to them. Sammy, there are people around here. We shouldn't say such things." "I said almost. I don't wish ill on anyone, but I'll be damned if I get sunk under this debt that I'm already paying off. The whole thing is rotten, and you know it. You're under the same problem." "I know. I got my first money owed message this week, all because of a small hospital visit. If I could go to the one a county over, it might not be so bad. But they at least accept that and work with you when you can't pay. Our place, though, they say you're owed money onto that debt company, even though they claim to work with you to settle the bill. High robbery, really." The door had opened to the strip mall lawyer's office, and 4 people emerged, one of them stopping and holding the door open. "We can see 3 people in line, please." "Oh, I guess I'll see you later, Sammy." They waved to one another as Caroline and the other two people would go inside, leaving Sammy alone out there. She would wait another 20 minutes before getting inside herself. It wasn't long before she was shown into a small space, a tiny cubicle that didn't have high walls or closure. Her lawyer, Brian, sat harassed, looking through papers all over the place and trying to sort through all of it at all times. Sammy had come in and sat down, tucking her legs in to give herself a bit more room. "Sammy, it is not so good to see you today. I am so busy. What is it this time?" "Oh, it's the same, Brian. It's the same. I guess things have gone to hell here." Well, with the judge dead, the debt company seems to be pushing for default rulings in another court, and is doing so without informing any people, unfortunately." Sammy's eyes went wide as she held her letters and used them to fan herself, as a sudden cold sweat broke out over her face. She didn't have the money to pay off all of in one swoop. Was she going to fall victim to such a scheme of these people? "Well, I've been getting letters about debt owed, and they haven't just suddenly sprung up on me." "Oh, a few people have as well. It's good that you got them. With the judge dead, I might not think that you're the highest target. If you ask me, then, that means that debt agency wasn't pushing for the death of that judge, since they were getting their money, but not getting their money. Maybe they were pushing for, I don't know. It's all clusterfucks into his death." "Seriously? This is what we're talking about right now?" "Sorry, merely theory and conjecture on my part. I know nothing about what they're up to other than demanding money, but it does seem like they want money, and fortunately you don't seem high up on their list since they're still sending letters to you. Do I have any recourse with what's happening to me, or do I not? We have a payment plan, and I have been paying it, and it was all set up by the judge. So, what is going on?" Brian sat back, doing his best to think about all of this. "Nothing has changed on your part, right?" "No." He sat further back in his chair, as far as he could this time, which was about an inch. I guess they could be pushing to say that you pay more since you aren't struggling to make your payments, and thus this new pitch is coming for your money. I don't know, though. It's all up in the air until we can figure out what they want." "Is there anything we can do, or that I can do?" "Well," he spread his hands over his desk to show the amount of work he had to deal with. "I will look into things and see if they have filed a case on your behalf to garner more wages or something. But until then, just keep paying what's owed, I guess. That's all I can say for you." She nodded, and since there was nothing else she could do, she stuffed the letters into her purse, thanked Brian for his time, and left. Sammy was quick to head to work, not having anything else to do today, and even though her hands had started to hurt again, and she couldn't call out because everyone always seemed to be calling out with some pain these days. She also couldn't go back to the doctors or to the hospital. Not now, not with the cost and the fact that the debt was probably going to be owed soon. She still had several $1,000s owed from a minor corrective surgery that hadn't actually worked. The kitchen that she entered was at least a safe space for the most part, except for the manager. Chef John there was the only one around right now, and he seemed busy with the late afternoon rush. He still took the moment to wave when he saw her. "What brings you in for work early? I thought you had a late shift tonight." "That's right, I do." He went quiet as he studied her and tried to figure out what she wasn't saying. In the end, he just gave a slight nod. "You need to talk. You can talk to me. We could use some help, though. Claire is all out there working on the floor." Carrie called out again. Jesus. And who thought it was a good idea to let our manager out there? As far as I know, Carrie quit and said she was moving and running away. I do not blame her one bit. Don't tell me that they got to you, too. She held up her hands, showing them trembling a little bit, and he shook his head and held up his own battered hand, which weren't shaking but were plenty scarred. I started dealing with the pain since it was easier than visiting some overpriced hospital. They all want to sell you down the river for a few pennies, so that the big shots who own that place get a few more pennies. I wouldn't be surprised if that dirt company and the hospital were owned by the same people." She nodded yes and didn't say anything as she wanted to go out to the dining area to see what she could do to help out. Out in the dining room, she found her way to the side station where all the drinks, utensils, and every other little helpful item a waiter or waitress might need were. She slipped her purse into a safe spot and looked out at the diner, which had a fair amount of customers. It was not overwhelming, but it was busy. Claire had already spotted her and hurried over. "Where have you been?" My lawyer's office down the road. My shift isn't till tonight, by the way." "Your shift is when I tell you it is, sweetie." "Well, you never told me when it was, other than tonight." Hand on her hip and looking displeased that the back talk was coming her way, Claire looked like she wanted to say something more. Instead, she simply harumphed as Sammy moved to grab a nearby tray. "What you need a lawyer for?" "Same reason everyone needs one around here lately. That damn judge and that damned company, before they showed up, this was a quiet place." "No, it was not, and I wish they hadn't shown up either, or that someone had done something or said something sooner to the whole affair. Yeah, half the town is afraid to go seek medical help, and the other half is just in debt from everything." With a nod, they went silent as Sammy studied who was at the tables and playing a short game of memorization of who was where and what would be needed shortly. Which tables are which?" Claire gave a quick rundown of what had been ordered by who, and Sammy noted it all in her mind. With that now done, she nodded and strolled out to take care of customers. After having made her way around to each of the customers and saying hi and establishing who she was, she floated behind the counter. A new customer had come in wearing a nice suit and waved at her as he headed towards a nearby booth table all alone. She nodded back and moved to grab up a menu from behind the counter and headed over towards that table as the customer got settled in. "Hi, welcome. I'm your server, Sammy, and I will be taking care of you today. Here's our menu. Since you don't look like you're from around here, I will warn you we do not do specials." "Thank you for the warning. I'll start with a coffee and a donut if you have any." "Coffee, yes. Donut, no. We have some pies, lots of pecan pies, and pecan pastries if you prefer those or like those." "I'll stick to looking at the menu for now, thank you." He looked over the vinyl-covered thing. Excuse me, I know this sounds awfully, terribly nosy of me, but you wouldn't perchance be one of the investigators of the case that's going on in town, would you?" "Am I that obvious?" "We don't get many people coming here, and now we have plenty. It seems easy to guess who might be looking into things." Well, I've been around here before, and I've been looking into things, certainly. Part of my job." "Oh, you're one of those who's looking into the crimes beforehand, not just the judge's death. You wouldn't happen to be looking for witnesses or testimonies and stuff?" Potentially." The customer put the menu down and looked her over appreciatively. Potentially, if you happen to know anyone, I'm certainly willing to listen." "Oh, well, you wouldn't have to go very far. The whole town pretty much has a say in the matter, and knows of people who owe money to we collect for you. I'm stuck with them. I happen to be stuck with that same agency as well." This detective of some sort leaned back in the booth and looked her over once more, reaching into his pocket, producing a business card. It was placed onto the table and slid over to her. "I'm Dane Carver, detective. I'm currently working with the state police, but I am a private detective. I'm looking into some matters, since the cops only have so much time in the day. Would you be willing to speak on the record about all that's happened to you?" "I suppose I could, though I don't have much to say on the matter." "That's not a big deal, and no worries on that part. We just want to know your circumstances and what happened and how you're dealing with things and so on. He was offering a sort of reassuring smile, which she wasn't entirely sure of. She picked up and studied this business card to feel it and see if it was for real. Yeah, I suppose I can tell you all, but later, my shift won't be done until late night tonight. I'll have no problems waiting, and if you could get me that coffee, please, that would be much appreciated. She went off to tend to his request and that of the other customers. Her shift had gone by at a not terribly quickly rate, but it went by, and her hands bothered her the entire time. When night fell, she got off of work and headed for the front parking lot of the diner. The patron, Dane, who claimed to be a private eye, said he'd be there in his car. Sammy held her purse against her as she looked about at the 2 cars parked in the parking lot. One of them was illuminated by an interior light. She went towards it and got up to the driver's side to see a figure behind the wheel. It looked like Dane, but unsure, she tentatively reached out and knocked on the glass window. There was a second before the figure inside responded by looking over and made the window roll down. She was relieved to see that it was Dane, and nodded to him as he smiled at her. "Well, you do keep your appointments, don't you?" Well, you asked me to talk about my experiences, so I'm trying to do the right thing." "Of course. I hope you don't mind a little trip to a hotel a town or 2 over. It's where all of this is going down." She scrunched her brow and bit her lip. That didn't sound good. Not one bit to her. That isn't what we agreed to, or it doesn't sound like something I should agree to. Forgive me, mister, but I must pass, if that is your insistence. If we were to meet, like, at a library tomorrow, or just in your car, in this brightly lit parking lot, then perhaps I might be willing, but, just to head over to a hotel, it sounds strange." The detective's face darkened a bit. "Now, there is no need for that, no need to be frightened of a little trip. I'll take care of you nice and easy with nothing bad happening." "I don't believe you, sir." "You're going to stop an investigation that might help your fellow citizens get out of a mess because of your emotions?" "Yes, good night." She moved and began walking away, casting a glance over her shoulder to make sure the man wasn't getting out of his car. He didn't appear to be, but her steps made her hurry back into the diner for safety. The sound of a car door opening made her panic and feel like something was terribly wrong as she got to the front door. "All I want to do is talk in peace and quiet. That hotel offers that." "Good night, sir." Southern hospitality sure seems to be going down the drain lately. Sammy hurried to the quiet kitchen, glancing back the dining room to see if the man had come in. The new cook, Mark, was leaning against the cooktop, which was as quiet as the rest of the diner. There was but one customer inside, and the server Lewis, who had followed her into the kitchen with a concerned look on his face. "Something going on?" She looked to Mark, who had said this, as Lewis touched her arm to show his concern. "A bad customer, I do think, or something, I think. I don't know. He was out in the driveway." "What do you mean?" Still frightened and unsure of herself, Sammy went to the window between the kitchen and the dining room to see if the man had followed. He didn't appear, but it didn't relax her one bit to see the empty diner. "A guy by the name of Dane came in this afternoon, said he was a private detective, wanted to talk to people who had dealt with the dead agency and the judge, I guess. He turned out to be creepy and said he wanted to take me somewhere. The guy in the car, I noticed him when he came in. He was sitting there not doing anything in his car. Really creepy to see that kind of thing." "Did he come in?" I don't think so. But I don't want to go out there and find out." "What about the back door, Sammy?" I feel like, private detective sort of person would think of that kind of thing, but thank you, Mark." The clink of a coffee mug was the only noise that came from the dining room, but it was still enough to make her jump. Perhaps if I wait here for a while, is that okay, guys? That's fine by me. The familiar bell ring of the door opening made them all freeze up for a second. None of them wanted to look out the window yet. They were all crowding near that window, between the kitchen and the diner, each pushing and shoving at one another to maybe get a potential look. Sit tight, Sammy. I'll go see who this is and then see if this is the person that's causing you all that trouble. With that, Lewis slipped out as Sammy was torn between seeing who was coming in and remaining hidden back here. I'm looking for some coffee to tide me over for the night. If you happen to have a fresh pot. I can put on a new pot if you're willing to wait a few minutes. Of course. Sit where you like and I'll be back. Since the voice sounded familiar and not like that of the strange Detective Dane's voice, Sammy peeked around the kitchen window to see Agent Victor. He was settling into a seat at the counter. The door to the kitchen swung open as Lewis came in and over towards her. Is that No, different guy. Perhaps one I can talk to? You sure? You can stay here. Sammy headed towards the door, and stopped there offering a sad, odd smile. Once through into the dining room, she paused at the door, then stepped aside in case Lewis needed to come through. A sudden panic running through her as to what she might say to get this officer's attention. Was he a police officer? She didn't really know. He kind of looked like one, but not really. She took a few steps over, staying behind the counter, and looking out beyond towards the parking lot as she approached him. A few steps from him, she came to a stop and leaned back against the counter of the diner as he looked up at her. You were here the other day when I visited. Yes, I was. You're a police officer, right? I'm a government officer of the law, so to speak. Good enough for my purposes. Are you investigating the judge and his crimes? Looking into matters about what's going on with him? Why? What's it to a waitress? I was approached by a private detective who said he's working with the state police. Well, it's a thing that's known to happen from time to time when the police don't have enough people, I suppose. Some former government agents tend to take that kind of work when they're bored. Why? What's up? Well, he felt off. Is it okay to say that? You'll need to explain a little bit better. Do private detectives generally take testimony, but only do so in a far-off location? The agent studied her for a minute, sitting there with his chin in his hand, trying to think. No, they would agree to a safe location like a police station or your home. Was he planning to take you somewhere? He said he wanted to go to a hotel a couple of towns over or something. Lewis arrived with the fresh cup of coffee and placed it down in front of Victor. Is everything okay here? It's fine, though. In a deft motion, Agent Victor grabbed his badge out of his jacket pocket, put it on the counter, open so that they could look at it. Both Sammy and Lewis leaned in to get a look at it, examining it carefully. For what, she wasn't really sure, but she took in all the details that she could. But having never seen a badge like this one, she didn't really know what to look for or what to look at. She only had TV series and movies to fall back on. They never actually show close-ups of badges. Here is my card with my phone number for my boss. Please feel free to call and bother them. They do deserve it sometimes. Better than not calling somebody. As for this detective, did you have a meeting spot to take you to this hotel? Right out in the parking lot over there. His car was over there, but I don't think I see it anymore. With a nod, Victor rose from his chair and walked over to look out the window. Sammy moved to join him in case his car was still there. No, I don't see his car anymore. Well, that's good. What's all this about, anyway? What testimony was he after? I have a debt owed to the company we collect for you. This was a case that Judge Percy ruled on, saying that I had to pay debt down as best I can. But with everyone investigating the situation. It's all been a bit hectic and I don't know what's going on anymore. I have more collection letters and I shouldn't have collection letters. I'm paying my debt. I see. And did you know the judge? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit, but please define how well you actually knew him. I can't say all that well, not as well as some, but fairly well, as we happen to go to the same church. Well, it's the first time I've heard that he was a religious man. Didn't have any such symbols in his home or anything like that. Oh, that would be because it isn't your standard saying prayers to Jesus and God thing like that. Oh, well, what kind of thing is it then? Snake charming church, though heavily split away from Christianity and other types. We are a small group who worship at the shrine of snakes and the poisons that they give us. He looked at her, which she returned, not the least bit bothered by what she had said. She pulled back the sleeve of her shirt to show the bite marks that were there. I did not expect that at all, since I thought that stuff was further north in the mountains, but not down here in the swamps, but what do I know? It came down with a preacher who was looking to get away from some bad stuff that went down, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. Those were the rumors. Judge DePercy was one of the first converts to it, though. And was the judge well liked by your group of snake worshippers? He didn't seem to be sold on the idea that the judge was in this religious group and sect, and confusion reigned across his face. Well, yes and no. Like most things, he was rich and didn't do much with those of less wealth. I think there were a lot of private sessions with the preacher. And where is this preacher now? Sammy stopped to think. It had only been a couple of weeks since the last prayer session out on the bayou. They were due for one, but she hadn't heard of any being called lately. I think he owns a place out on the swamp. You don't know if he does or doesn't, or you just don't know where he might be? A little bit of both, I suppose. We usually get sent a text message about where the meeting will be a week before the church session happens. The location ranges from place to place, rarely ever in the same spot, as far as I'm aware. Most of the time it's out on the bayou, on boats mostly, but sometimes on land. Sammy stood there trying to look around to make herself feel more comfortable. There still was an uneasiness to things around her which kept her on edge. This agent felt only slightly more trustworthy than Dane, the private detective. She questioned herself on why she felt so at ease, telling him all that she just had. I should be getting home now. Thank you for your help. Well, no problem. You wouldn't happen to know if there are any airboats or boats that can go out onto the bayou, would you? There are a couple, but you won't find our meeting spots. I'm more interested in the preacher than those meeting spots, though. It probably would be good to see those as well. Well, if you're lucky, he might be in town. You can't miss him as he wears snakeskin jacket and boots. Only person around here that does that. She moved off and headed towards the nearby kitchen, as he went back to the counter and his drink of coffee. Carefully, ever so carefully, Sammy peeked out around the door of the kitchen, looking out onto the back parking lot of the diner. It was empty, quiet, and poorly lit. There were no signs of any trouble, but that did not make her feel any better about all that she saw. I can go out before you and look around. No one has ordered any food, so... She jumped and went out the door, then swinging around as Mark came out, with a cigarette in his mouth. She wanted to say something, but found that her words were failing her right now. Don't worry, I'll look around for you. Stay right by this door. She stayed as he went past, walking the small spot and looking around the back road behind the diner. Other than the dumpster, which was closed, and had a swarm of flies trying to find a way in around the closed lids, it appeared to be empty. Mark made his way back to her, lighting his cigarette along the way. Clear as far as I can tell. Thanks. She hurried away from the diner, heading towards her home on foot, her jogging pace turned into an all-out sprint, since she had to get past 3 roads to get to her mobile home park. Things weren't spread out here in this section of town, but the roads did have a good 150 feet between them, and they have a tendency to go back and forth lazily. Her run was rewarded when the entrance of the mobile park home came into sight. The pace of running slackened a bit as she took in deep breaths of air. It was an exhausting one, and she was almost home safe. Sammy made it to the front door of her home and went inside without further problem. Her heavy breathing and inability to get her heart to calm down, it was causing her a bit of problems as she leaned against the door and into and out of the home. With a gulp, she turned on the lights and looked around, since everything had felt so off lately. Her amped-up emotions kept her keen to the smallest of things, as shadows felt like they were ready to jump out at her at any moment. A glass of water, murky as it might be from the tap, didn't do much to calm her down. She eventually found her way to bed, unable to sleep well, but she fell asleep. A knock on the door broke apart the last of her ability to get any sleep. With some hesitancy, she got up and found a thin wooden stick and went towards her door, peeking out a window along the way to see 3 men standing outside. 2 she recognized as the sheriff, and the other the government cop she'd met the last night. She went to the door and, after undoing the locks, opened it a crack. "Can I help you?" "Morning, Sammy. I hope we aren't bothering you much with this morning, but there's lots of strange things going on and we needed to talk to you. I believe you know Agent Victor, and this other cop here is Detective Nick with the state police." "Oh, Good morning. I'm Detective Nick, and we're looking into the matter of the judge's death and trying to nail down some details." Sammy took but a moment to begin putting things together in her mind. "I'm guessing this is about seeing the preacher, then." "If you would be so kind, Sammy. I've only seen him around town once or twice, but you could help us out and get us to talk to him, hopefully. We just want to settle some matters." Sammy looked at Sheriff Wilton and noted several bandages about his face as she fully opened the door to her place. The 3 didn't seem to want anything bad, but she wasn't sure she wanted to go anywhere with anyone right now. "You don't have to come if you don't want to." "It would make things easier if you did, though. But coordinates out onto the bayou swamp area where you think this preacher might be staying, I'd be grateful for any help." She looked confused at that. How would they get there by coordinates alone? Unless they knew someone who knew the bayou. It was just a quick way to get lost. Wilton seemed to recognize this look in her. "My girlfriend, if you've forgotten, Sammy, helps work the tour boats out on the bayou. She can mostly get us around the area." "Oh, I forgot about her. Well, I don't have coordinates that I can give you. She paused for a moment and wondered if it was okay to give away the name of another member of the church. It didn't seem like it would be, and it might get her expelled. "Well, can you at least show us this place, please, Sammy?" "I was trying to think of one of the other churchgoers, but as long as you can make it back before evening, it would be okay, I guess, if I took you out there. I'm not so sure on this, but let me get some things, and I guess we will go." "All righty, we'll wait for you, Sammy." Sammy nodded to the sheriff and then the other 2 cops, as they all looked relaxed, and she went back inside to fetch her things. End of Part 4 of A Judge, a Jury, and a Sheriff. Thank you for listening.